Hey everyone, this is Kevin from themathworld.com, and today we're going to be talking about derivatives on a basic level. We'll get more in depth in later lessons, but today I first want to talk about what is a derivative and then a few simple computations that you'll be using throughout calculus and extended math if you go further than calculus. The first thing we need to know is what is a derivative, and in its simplest terms it is the change of rate of something. So a lot of times, and in math, that's usually the slope. So if we look at a line, a straight line, and we say what is the slope of this line, it's going to be continuously constant. So all we have to do is find 2 points, and that tells us the rate of change of this line. But if instead, if the graph looks something like this, at any point on this graph, it's going to have a different slope. There's going to be a different slope at this point, there's going to be a different slope at this point, and there's going to be a different slope at this point, as you can tell. And so there's no one slope for the entire graph. So what we do in calculus is we find a point on a graph and we try to find the slope at that one point, and that's going to be the derivative. Now a lot of times, and what I want to talk about today in the introductory lesson, is how to calculate a derivative. And on its simplest terms, let's say we have f of x equals x cubed plus 3x squared plus 150. If this is our function, and then they say what is f of x, and they may do a little 1 here, or they may just ask you what is the derivative of this function. Here's how we're going to do it, and then we're going to talk about some additional things that you want to know if it goes beyond just a simple function like this. So in this case, what you do is you take all your x's. If you have any constants, like a number that doesn't have a variable, then you can just go ahead and get rid of those. When we take the derivative, that's going to equal out to 0, so you can just completely disregard that. All we're going to focus on are the x's in this case. And all we do is this x third, is we take this 3 and we multiply it to the beginning. And in this case, since we just have a 1, it becomes 3x. And then we subtract 1 from the exponent. And 3 minus 1 is 2. So we are left with 3x squared. 3x to the second power. And the same thing over here, we have 3. We multiply 2 to 3, and we're left with 6. And then we subtract 1 from this 2, and we're left with 1. And since we don't really write 1, the derivative of x cubed plus 3x squared plus 150 is 3x squared plus 6. And so this is going to work anytime, and it's very important to know how to work any of these. So we'll go with another one. We'll say 10x to the 4th minus 2x squared plus 3x. And they say, what is the derivative of this function right here? First thing we need to do is multiply 4 times 10, and we get 40x. And again, we have to subtract 1 from 4, so we're left with 3. 40x cubed minus, we have to multiply 2 by 2, so we get 4x, and 2 minus 1 is 1, so we're left with x to the first power. And then we have a 1 up here, so we multiply 1 by 3, and we're left with 3. And then 1 minus 1 is 0. X to the 0th power is 1. So 3 times 1 is 3. So this right here, anytime you have just an x, you're actually just going to drop the x there. But the derivative of this function is 40x cubed minus 4x plus 3. And that's an easy way if you just have a function like that. Now, unfortunately, in calculus, things are not always that simple. A lot of times you're asked to find specific things, and a lot of times you'll ask for the derivative of cosine, sine, tangent, natural log, logarithm, and there's a few things that you're going to have to memorize in calculus. If you want to be successful in calculus, you just need to memorize these things. So I'm going to go ahead and list out some of the things that you do need to memorize. The first one that you need to know is that the natural log, the derivative, all these things I'm going to be writing are the derivatives. The natural log, the derivative of this is 1 over x. The next one that you need to know is log, the derivative of this is 1 x ln of a. And then we get into sine, cosine, and tangent. And sine, the derivative of sine is cosine. That one's the easy one. The derivative of cosine is negative sine. Make sure I put my negative there. A lot of people get confused. They think the derivative of sine is cosine and the derivative of cosine is sine. That's not correct. The derivative of cosine is negative sine. Make sure you always put that negative because a lot of people get tripped up there. And the derivative of tangent is equal to secant squared, or as many of you know, secant squared is 1 over cosine squared. So, with this said, I'm going to go ahead and erase this, but you need to memorize. These are just some. There are more advanced ones as far as the derivative of cosecant, secant, tangent. You need to memorize those, but these are some of the common ones that you're going to see a lot. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at a problem here and see how we can use these. And we're going to take 3x, let's do squared, and we'll do plus cosine x squared plus ln x plus 17. So as you can see here, this is a little bit more complicated than just 3x squared plus x plus 7. We have a few things in here that we actually are going to have to use what we just talked about. So the first one we're going to take a look at is 3x squared, and we're going to take a derivative of this. So again, we multiply 2 times 3, and that's 6x, and then we subtract 1 from this 2, and that's 1. So we just have our 1 up top, and I'm not going to put that there. Next thing we need to do is cosine, and the derivative of cosine is negative sine, so remember that. So we have negative sine, and we have this x squared in here, and we have to do the same thing with this as we would out here. So just like for x squared, if you take the derivative of x squared is 2x, remember multiply the 2 out and then subtract 1, we have to do the same thing with this x squared. So we're actually going to put 2x out here, and this is going to stay the same. So the derivative of cosine x squared is minus 2x sine x squared. So very important to know. And then plus, now a lot of times if you don't have this memorized, you're going to have no idea. But since we already talked about it before, we know this is 1 over x. And as we talked about before, the derivative of any constant number is going to be 0. So we can just delete that. We don't have to have it in there. So this is your function, and this is the derivative right here. So a lot of times it may be simple, but a lot of times you'll have to build on different things that you've learned in the past, and a lot of times you'll have to have things memorized because you're not going to sit there and know how to find the derivative of cosine. You're going to have it memorized. So very important to know how to find the derivative, but also a few things that you have to have memorized. So this is the intro to derivatives. Later on we'll get into a little bit more advanced and take a look at how to use those. So if you haven't already checked out the website, themathworld.com, and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.